Hello, my peeps, and welcome back to Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I am still your host, Ike. And before I go to bed, I'd like to take a moment and say thanks for being here and giving this pod a listen. It means a lot to me that you chose to use your precious time and give me and my guest your ears. Now, if after all these lovely noises come out of my and their mouths, you still have the wherewithal, it'd be really cool if you shared this with someone who you think would like it, or just subscribe yourself if you already haven't. That'd mean a lot. And if you want to tell me what parts of the show you were passionate about, peeved you off, or just say hi, you can always reach me on Twitter at LikeIkes and via email passionandpeevespodcast@gmail.com. So, this is just got back from Chicago, the old Windy City, which very much lived up to its name. Holy fucking crap, that city is windy. Just it cuts like a knife. It was really cold there. I think it was around like 30, 20 degrees depending upon the day. I was bundled up, and when I wasn't being subjected to gusts, I was fine. But then occasionally you just turn a corner, the pathway is such through the buildings, it just comes down. That is cold. It is so amazing how much more cold the weather gets when it is windy versus when it is not. And Chicago, you lived up to your name, I'll give you that. You're windy as hell. Holy crap. Well done, I guess. Got in on a Thursday, had a terrible ride from a fucking taxi. Never again. I'm never taking a taxi. Unless time is of the utmost importance. I will never take a taxi again in my life. Fuck that service. I'm glad you guys are fucking dead. Metaphorically, not really. Don't wish any harm upon you, but you were terrible at your jobs. You took it for granted. You treated people like shit. At least, the pay rate for an Uber and a Lyft is honest. The service itself might be a little like lackadaisical to dishonest of like how good a driver you're getting, but I am not a businessman. I don't need 9-point turns or some shit like that. I'm fine with random bozo driving me somewhere. I'm not dead. They got me to where I needed to be. I paid the rate that I was supposed to pay. Not this horse shit of, oh man, I took a wrong turn. Fuck you. You're charging me more money. Eat shit and die. All right. Got that out of the way. Other than that, my trip was lovely, sans the eggs. Chicago, you need to learn how to make eggs. Random aside, every single egg I had in that city was crap. I love eggs. I'm not that highfalutin when it comes to eggs. Y'all did a piss poor job at making eggs. It's embarrassing. Get your shit together. It's not hard. McDonald's does it just fine. That's how easy a lay I am when it comes to fucking eggs. So other than taking a taxi service like a moron and eating their eggs, Chicago was fine. It was cold. Whatever. Can't change that. I respect it living up to its moniker at the very least. Now here's where shit gets fun. Don't know how much you discussed it here previously. I went to this tournament in this city not feeling great about my opportunity and my chances. Wasn't loving the vibe I was getting from testing. Felt like I didn't know which way was up. I was kind of sad, a little bit angry about it. But, after talking to some people who loved me, thanks, Mom, and had good guidance, also thanks, Mom, and also thanks to my therapist, whose name will remain nameless, because I want him all to myself. I was able to do good. In fact, I did great. Between recentering my head and getting very, very lucky, I had the second best outcome humanly possible. I ended up getting second place and winning 8 bands, as the kids say, and getting back on the Pro Tour. So I'll be going to Pro Tour Seattle in late April, reteaming with my same homies, Derek Davis and Chris Ferber. Very excited with them and co. It's going to be fucking great. Had a lovely time, kicked ass, lost to somebody who I, kind of stand for, as the kids say. They go by the pseudonym Sift Sock, CFTSOC. They are awesome. you're not hearing this, but Sift, I think you're fantastic, and you are one of my favorite people to ever play against. I think you're the coolest. Then, after having this great weekend winning all this money, got to have the best Lyft drive I've ever had in my whole entire life. Get picked up. The setting, Chinatown, Monday morning. Isaac has to catch a flight. So I called the Lyft service, got picked up, and this guy picks me up. 65-year-old, slender, black man sitting in the front and drives. We don't drive 2 blocks before he stops at a stoplight, thankfully. And this lady in very form-fitting attire crosses the street. And with no provocation goes, "You can look, but you can't touch, Jack." "Ooh, Jack. Ooh, you can look, but you can't touch. It's okay." I'm sitting in the back just going, huh? And he sees the look upon my face of somewhere between being completely startled, baffled, and very much enjoying the moment. And he goes, "You see what I'm looking at, Jack?" I go, "Yeah, I see it. I see it. No. You agree with me?" I was like, I mean, it's good. Yeah, sure, whatever. You ever get in that spot where somebody says something pretty outlandish and they ask you to agree with them, but you're kind of too flummoxed to say anything but, even though you kind of don't agree with them? Yeah, that was me this whole entire ride. It was amazing. We go another couple blocks. He asks me where I'm going back to. I go, "Oh, I'm going back to LA." He goes, "Oh, LA. Went there back in the 70s. Got a kilo of Coke. Brought it back to Chicago. Chopped it up. It was so pure we opened it up. I threw up. My partner shit his pants. That's when we learned you gotta cut Coke wearing a mask." To which I died laughing, as I am right now, because it's the funniest fucking thing I've ever heard. Proceeded to talk more about, I've always been curious about the upside down of the world we live in. So, okay. He's telling me about Coke. I'm going to listen about Coke. What else goes on? How do you cut Coke? I've always been kind of curious. Yeah, about 85-15, cocaine and baking soda. I was like, wow, that's a lot of baking soda. He goes, "No, that's the Coke." Apparently, I was like, "Well, why do you cut it? Can't you cut it more?" He goes, "Yeah, but you want return customers. In fact, just saw one of my customers the other day." Like, "You still sell Coke?" He goes, "No, from back in the day. I was at his mom's funeral." He comes up to me, he goes, "Hey, Jack, got any Coke?" Like, "No, you fiend. It's your mom's funeral. Get the fuck out of here." Then he gets a call on his phone, and I am not making this up. I am not that original. Gets a call on his phone, and it just reads, "Wife," in all caps. To it, he does the thing I appreciate. There are 3 options, I feel like, as a driver, as I did it for a tiny modicum of time in San Francisco. There are 3 options when you receive a phone call and you're driving. You can not answer. That's valid. You can not answer and then do what some horrible Uber drivers have done recently and text. Wouldn't recommend that, as it's wildly illegal and unsafe for all participants. Or, preferably, I kind of love this man's 3rd option, which is just answer it. So I'm just sitting back here laughing. He goes, "Hold on a minute." Just answers the call from wife in all caps. He goes, "Hey, beautiful." And she proceeds to ask in many different ways, "Is it just you and me, baby?" He's like, "Yeah, it's always you and me, baby. Ride or die." And then clearly what I understand, and she's trying to say, and I kind of think he was understanding and having a little bit of fun, is she wanted to know if he was the only one in the vehicle at the time. And so she asked multiple times, "Is it just you and me? Are we alone? This and that." And he just keeps making these answers that are technically correct, but not answering it as fully as she would prefer. So she eventually gets down and goes, "Is there someone in your back seat?" And goes, "Yeah, I'm at work." She just kind of annoyedly goes, "All right, well, call me back when he's not there." Goes, "You got it, lovely." Just hangs up the phone. I was like, "Oh man, how long you been married?" He goes, "Oh, a long time." Like 40 years or whatever. He goes, "In fact, just the other day, before I picked you up, this lady was in the back of my car. And when I brought her to her destination, she said, "Hey, want to come inside? I want to suck the dick off your body." And I was like, "Ooh, baby, 35 years ago, I would have been there, but you're 35 years too late. Now I got a wife, a house, 40 acres, and a mule." Which, for those of you that don't get the reference, he's referring to what African Americans in this country got given to them by the government after the Civil War ended, which is fucking amazing. And then to cap it off, he pulls up to the airport, drops me at my spot, and goes, "All right, just, I'm gonna leave the car running. I gotta go take a shit, so see ya." And then he just gets out of the car, leaves the keys in it at the Chicago airport, and just beats me inside, even though I was running late for a flight and had to scoot. Because apparently he needed to drop something else off at the airport, metaphorically speaking. Anyway, that was my trip to Chicago. Started, preeminently was not great, and then ended amazing. Thank you so much, Jack! And have a lovely time, and I hope I can find you again next time I visit the Windy City. In other news, this week's episode is, hold on, I have a last name I have a last initial I'd like to say his given name. David Wentworth. Wentworth? I don't know. David W. That's what I was gonna say. Comes to us via recommendation from Kyle Rowan, last week's guest. Thanks, bud. And we had a terrific and hilarious filled talk about art, cinema, and all other kinds of absurdities. So without further ado and anecdotal evidence, take it away past me. All right, folks, tonight we have a special guest. He built a full-scale origami unicorn puppet with Jeffrey Combs. He raised over $1,000 for the WWF as an RA, and is the only reason I know of that Catherine Applegate didn't end the Animorph series. It's the one, the only, David Wentworth! Yeah, exactly.
You can't tell I'm waving my hand in front of my face right now.
And why shouldn't you? Yes. Nobody can see you.
It's funny. So, I never actually watched WWE, but I did watch Kaiju Big Battle. I don't know if you're familiar.
I am not, because I'm not that cool. But okay. As you are someone who is that cool,
yeah.
What is your passion that has brought you to this fine table today?
Yes. So my passions are for, as an artist, my passions are storytelling. I get really into that. I get really into world building, language, history, things like that. And I like to incorporate it all into these worlds that I make through my art. And so that can be, I do viz dev, illustration, comic books, character design, and I also make puppets. And so for me as an artist, like, the medium is almost an excuse. Like, I'll get into storytelling and characters and stuff. Doing any medium you put in front of me, I'll get passionate and excited about it. So
what was the first medium you remember storytelling through?
Yeah. It was probably crayons. Everyone played with toys.
I was eating them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was quite the story. Yeah, getting your stomach pumped. No, my grandmother, her last job before she retired was she was doing like office work. And so she would get these big reams of paper they were just going to throw out, the ones with the green and white lines. And so she'd bring it home. And so I'd spend every summer with my grandparents in Connecticut. And I would just endlessly be sketching all the time, usually of animals, often stories. I'll tell you an example of one. My parents are both scientists. And so I had a pretty clear understanding of what DNA was as like a preschooler, kindergartner, and but I didn't quite have all the like pieces put together. So I theorized, and this is before Animorphs existed, mind you. I theorized that like if you drank the DNA of an animal, you could turn into the animal, and so like I was trying to make little like I don't
Oh, so
quite want to.
vampires.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course. I never tested this theory, thankfully, but
Oh.
I did draw the concept, and it was I would call it like a proto comic almost, where it's like this like little drawing of me like with a vial and then turning into a mouse.
Okay, so all of this is happening. You said your parents are scientists. What kind of scientists are your parents? What do they do?
Yeah, well, they're both retired now. My mom did grant research at UMass Medical, and my father worked in biopharmaceuticals, specifically, especially in rare diseases, diseases that are
Wow.
typically considered too rare to even bother treating because there's not enough people with it to make considerable money off of it.
So some might
So
say those are mythic rare diseases.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
ah, anybody? Anybody?
yeah,
Card game
yeah,
collectors?
yeah,
So when you
mythical.
were doing this as a kid and getting into this, I'm assuming this was a passion from wee little and it just proliferated as you got older. Is that a fair assumption on my part? You just
Oh yeah,
continued to draw, love
earliest.
to draw, tell stories.
Yes, always drawing and telling stories, and yeah, that always that only grew, and my family was always very supportive, thankfully.
Okay, that's that. You're getting ahead of me there. Yeah,
Oh,
I was kind of curious if no, good thing. I was curious if that was going to be a like no, damn it, you're gonna you're gonna grow up and do a of this or that. You're gonna have a beaker in your ass twenty
you
four
have
seven. Or
you
if
haven't
you
even
were
touched your microscope.
yeah, exactly. Like they're just leaving a chem set and just like
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
playing with the chemicals. He's not using them properly with
No
equipment.
son of mine is going to be drawing with the boron. No. So no, they were always very supportive. They very they knew the direction the wind was going, and I've always been stubborn enough that they were like, we better work with this because we're working against it. I'll be doing it in spite of them, regardless. But they always were very supportive, and
Did you have
you know,
any brothers or sisters growing up, or was it just you?
it's uh, it's a funny thing you ask. I
See,
have
they have
one.
this lab.
Right. Yeah. I have one brother, and he is we're kind of opposites in a lot of ways. One of the few things we ever agreed on was both liking Star Trek, but he's very physics, math, coding type, and
Thank
so.
goodness for your parents, someone that made him proud.
No, don't worry. They're not proud of him at all. No,
They're not
joking.
proud of him either.
I'm joking, Tom. But no, they so he was my only brother growing up. That recently changed uh, because the proliferation of DNA testing has shown that basically the short version of the story is that my dad made a donation to a bank in the 80s, and and so now
$5.
yeah, and so now I've got like a dozen half siblings I didn't know about until like 4 years ago or so, give or
Christmas is
take.
really weird. I buy all
Oh,
of them half a card.
it's wild. Yeah, we were joking. Like you got to line up so that my dad can do like the catch thing. Like, good job, sport. Like,
Just speed runs childhood
yeah,
for all
yeah,
30 of
yeah.
them.
The Barbie doll and the sports trophy with everyone on the bed. Yeah.
Now gather around while I tell you in the next 5 minutes how we procreate.
Right. Love. The
So
answer is love.
having it's interesting you brought up Star Trek. How much of your art did they get involved with in more than just the, parental like showing interest and appreciation for their son's art? Did they really buy in and kind of like that? Did you kind of lean sci-fi because of Star Trek or because, your family was predominantly in that oeuvre, or did you stay a certain path and they kind of trended back and followed it all?
Yeah, I've always been. I want to say I've always been pretty independent. I certainly in terms of the worlds and stories and things I like to depict, I tend to be very full of dichotomy. And so I I certainly like to inject a dose of realism into my concepts, and having a family with a scientific background helps that. But the way I always describe it to people is like I like to walk the line between scientific and whimsical, and so sometimes you veer off into one side or the other depending on the project. But my parents never really had any input uh, into what I depicted. They never tried to tell me to do XYZ really. Like it's always been about what I was passionate about depicting, and they might have insights about those things.
Oh, no. Sorry, I wasn't saying that they made you do that. I'm wondering if you did that to like bond with them. Like growing up, it sounds like you guys
Oh,
watched Star Trek. I'm wondering if that affected your art perspective at any point. Like, were you ever trying to be like, see, I get science, and like drawing a beaker, and they're like, you did it wrong, or
no, I don't think that really it ever really happened like that. I've never really felt an inability to bond with my family. We have a lot of other interesting. Like my mom and I are both very passionate about animals, for example. And so,
her cutting them in half, you drawing them as pictures.
right, well, she worked with Drosophila, yes, fruit flies, um, and but like I grew up with a lot of pets and things like that. And like when it came to like engaging with the art that I wanted to learn more about, like my parents were always there and willing to like support that journey, whether it was in the form of like reference books or taking art classes at the Worcester Art
Aww.
Museum, or buying anime even, like yeah, like back when Suncoast existed, right? Like I got for a birthday one year. I my first ever box set of any anime was Evangelion, and I'd never watched it before, and my mom was happy to do that for my birthday, and of course they never watched it, which maybe is for the best.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like they won.
Yeah.
So, did you ever growing up, you got the bug that is, if I am to correctly assume, and for those at home to make sure, that it sounds like this is you know, this is your occupation. This is what you not only do for the love of it, but also for the bread of it.
Yeah. It's as much my profession as it is who I am. Absolutely.
Did you ever think growing up in this, kind of getting blue pilled early, getting supported by a loving and awesome family, did you ever at any point think about not doing this? Was there ever a point where you either fell out of love, you kind of questioned it, you tried something else and went, I mean, maybe I am a belly dancer? Or was this all, has this been a non-stop train to Passion Town?
Yeah, no, this is all I've ever wanted to be. I remember when I was in high school, I was in an improv class, which is another fun art form, acting. And there was a class challenge where we would like get up on a stool and just sort of answer whatever questions were thrown our way. And I knew when this was high school, and I knew that being an artist or an illustrator what was always my goal. And I remember the teacher's like, "What's Plan B?" And I just sort of like looked at her. I was like, "There is no Plan B. Like, I'm doing this." and and her response was, very encouraging. She goes, "Oh, good. Like, I always worry about people that have Plan Bs." I was like, "Oh, there you go."
So, if it had come down to it, if you broke your wrist, if the entertainment industry wouldn't have you, what which whatever sad tragic ending, what do you think you would have gone towards? What do you think you would have been like, maybe I'll give this a shot? Was there anything that
Sure.
held enough interest, enough love of the game that you would have, that it would have been like the kind of silver medal choice?
Um, you know, so I mean, my knee jerk answer is to say like, oh, like if something catastrophic had occurred, I would have just changed and done a different kind of art. Uh,
Sure.
but it would have still been art. But if you, I kind of have this. So this is, for the sake of people listening, this is a joke. But a joke that I have with Kyle, your previous guest, it's like, because so I feel very strongly that art is also political, and all art is political, even art that's trying not to be political because of the things they choose to ignore or treat as normal. And
Sure.
so I jokingly say to Kyle, like for a lot of artists, the only other career path that would make sense is like activist or terrorist, right? Because like so much of what we do is intertwined with who we are as people and our politics, and trying to make the world a better place, and uh you know uh fighting that fight, whether it's with your work or not with your work, right? Like,
Mm.
I think that matters.
So growing up, thankfully, you don't end up becoming a terrorist. You
Yes,
go
that's a
through.
good thing. Yes, that's thankful. Yeah, and it's like
Woo!
I'm a pacifist and a vegan, so like the threat of that was
You would
low,
have
but
been that would have been a terrible career change for you to be a
yeah, well,
terrorist as a
but
pacifist and
maybe
vegan.
like eco terrorist, right? Where I go and break bulldozers in like the Amazon, right? Like, so like I'm not hurting anyone, but I am causing damage, right?
Sure.
Like that's better, right?
You're making the cost of my wood table go up by 30 cents.
Well, I mean,
So
yeah, it'll make all the difference to the birds living in that tree, though.
exactly, you did it. You got him an extra month.
Yeah,
So luckily that doesn't happen. You go
right.
through high school. What was your education process for those who are kind of interested in going in that route? Because
Yeah.
for a lot of people it's a kind of unclear path. Did you go traditional high school? Did were you favoring art class growing up in junior high? Did you go to a art specific university? What was your trajectory?
Yeah. So absolutely favored art classes in every level of schooling. I went to public school. My high school, I went to Algonquin Regional in Northborough. Um, while I was in high school and middle school to some extent, I think I took classes at the Worcester Art Museum. So I was doing some weekend classes on top of that. Then in junior year of high school, I attended the School Museum of Fine Arts summer program, which was good for college credits, but it's not why I did it. I wanted to, I wanted to see what that school was like, School Museum of Fine Arts, which was right next to Mass Art, which is where I did my undergrad. And so Mass Art is the last state-funded art school in America. And on top of my mom doing grant research with the state and with being an in-state resident, was the equivalent of a decent scholarship just to go there. And so Mass Art's a really great college. Um, However, they definitely, at the time anyway, geared their illustration department in terms of the industries that are most common in New England for illustrators, which is mostly editorial, freelance, children's books, things like that.
Okay.
And I knew that I wanted to do concept art and like comic book type stuff, and so there wasn't a ton of. I had to sort of jury rig some of my thesis project and classes to kind of accommodate that passion. And so I knew there was more I needed to learn after mass art, and so I applied to graduate school, and I went to Academy of Art University in San Francisco. They had departments like called concept art and like graphic novel and stuff. It was great. And my thesis professor there was Gary Amaro, and he worked on Sandman, so he was like a wonderful teacher to have. Um, but um, just as a caveat for people listening, AAU has phenomenal teachers and a dog shit administration. They are a for-profit college. They will bleed you dry if they get the chance. Mass Art is a much more affordable school, and I would say a more well-rounded kind of option. Because when people think about like art schools,
Yeah.
they're not all created equal, right? There are there's a big difference between going to an art school and going to a school with an art department. Um, it's just true, and that's not to say that people that go from the latter don't make great work or move on to have fulfilling careers. I'm sure that some of them do, but in terms of the focus of your education, it's a big difference. And there's also structure to consider. So I mentioned that summer program with School Museum of Fine Arts. They were very like, I want to say like cliche art school, where it's like people can do things as, some people are making these phenomenal pieces of art and some people are finger painting, and like you never really know what you're going to get. And then there's schools like RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, where things are very structured, where they're like, you got to draw that fucking bicycle and don't fuck it up. Like it's very structured. And then I think mass art is like right in the middle. And I think that's really good. I think they give you the flexibility to kind of pursue your passions, but they also try to like make sure you're prepared for the workforce. Um, and so going back to AAU there, AAU, because they have such great teachers, they also have a lot of insight to what the current industry is like. And
Seems
that
rather
was one.
important.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that's when I made a big transition into doing a lot of digital. Um, and before I was a little bit more mixed media. My background is actually in like acrylics, watercolors, and inks. And
Something that is not happening that much right now.
yeah, well, certainly not in the larger industries, right? But like I do think having that foundation in traditional mediums definitely helped.
Oh yeah.
Especially in terms of once I switched to digital, like because you have a stronger understanding of color theory. You can also more clearly mimic the styles you're going for. Like I've had paintings
Oh
that
okay. Yeah.
I've done paintings in digital media that I tried to make look like watercolor. And I'm not trying to brag, but like I fooled people with that. Like there are people that have thought, oh, is this watercolor? It's like, well, I wanted it to look like watercolor, but it's digital. So I got a little,
It's not watercolor. It's
yeah,
digital.
I got a little off topic, but so that is the core of my educational experience. So I've been doing education in the arts for a long time, is sort of the short answer. But I do think so I do think college should be free. Um, and I do, and like, I think there's a lot of people who might be listening who are asking themselves, like, should I go to art school? Should I go to college? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if you can afford it, under the current system, if you can afford it, I think you should do it. Not just for the sake of understanding, the materials and having the expertise of the disciplines taught to you, but also I and this might not sound fair, but also for the connections you would build in such an environment. Um,
Mm.
a lot of the people that you meet at college, especially in the art world, because it's a smaller pond, they're going to be your colleagues and coworkers and peers in the future. They're going to help you get work. You're going to help them get work. And meeting them in college is a great place to build those relationships, not just for sake of your employment, but also to have friends, right? And be part of the art community.
Whoa, whoa! Are you saying friends are important, sir?
Littlefoot was right. You
Oh
know,
my god!
just no one wants to live in a world where three horns don't hang out with long necks. Okay, right?
All right, that's too deep a cut. So, what do you predominantly? What is your predominant focus or workflow? I guess for a more hacky ref to what you do in Hollywood or the media space. What is your
Yeah.
general kind of focal point at this juncture?
So I'm a viz dev and character artist. I've done I also make comics. I mentioned that. But when it comes to doing work in the LA area, so I freelance, and I've done freelance for small projects and pitch decks, and I've done freelance for larger companies and stuff. The most famous thing that I tell people I worked on, like I designed the posters for the Trolls 2 movie. the one
Hell yeah.
with the little rock on hand. I that was my pitch. I didn't do the final render on that painting, but on that poster, but I did pitch the idea. I was in working there at the time. But I've yeah, so I've been doing, as a freelancer, you find yourself wearing a lot of different hats, right? So
Mostly because
typically,
they're free and on the ground.
well, yes, yes, right, yes, and it's cold out. My ears are cold. I um, I find, so, like I said, I do viz dev and character design, and I do that for clients, big and small. But I also lately, in the past like year or two, I've started getting a lot of storyboarding clients as well. So I've been doing a lot of storyboards for commercials for like Olay and RuPaul's Drag Race and Dove soap and Boom Chicka popcorn and all sorts of other companies. Yeah, like
Pop popcorn.
yeah. Well, I started working with a bunch of commercial directors, and they needed storyboards, and it's been a pleasure working with them. But
So for those who
yeah.
don't know about the industry, what would you say if you look at an average week, what would you say, how much of your time would you say you are working versus you are finding work?
It used to be more. I used to be hunting for work quite a bit when I first moved out here, and after graduating, I would say. So I graduated from my master's in 2013, and I moved to LA in 2016, just before the election. Um, and I would say for the so right now, as of this recording, it's 2024, the beginning of 2024, and I would say for the first like 5 or 6 or so years of since moving out here, let's say 5, I found myself hunting for work a lot more. It's hard to put a percentage on it, but I would say like when I first moved out here, probably like I want to say 35-40% of a work week was either applying to jobs or hunting for clients. But now it's a lot less. I find my clients are finding me more often, which is a great feeling to have. Honestly, it takes a while. It takes a while to build that relationship
It's
with.
good to be wanted, it turns out.
Yes, yes, yes. I would say it is, and so now I would say in terms of hunting for clients, maybe out of a given work week, I don't know, maybe like 10, maybe
Nice.
15%. Like really
Yeah.
not that much.
You get to
Um,
art a lot more. Love
yeah,
that.
I find because what's a much more effective way, in my opinion, to find clients, right, is to be working on your stuff. So like I'll be working on a new paint. I've always got like a few dozen paintings that are works in progress, and I try not to stress too much about like not having a job any one week. Like this past week, I didn't have a client to work with, and that's okay because it gave me time to work on my stuff. And then once I finish my stuff, I post it online, and then maybe a client will find me.
Hmm.
And more often than not, that's the case. Um,
Is freelancing what you would like to be doing in 10 years, or would you prefer to be like kind of like it's not like the same thing as a lawyer, but kind of being
sure,
consistently used by any one company or any one
sure.
studio?
I when I moved out to LA, it was with the goal of trying to get some studio work. And everyone's career path takes a different route. Um, it took me a while to kind of uh, appreciate that I am industry, because there's a lot of like I want to say like social pressure and culture around like the prestige or whatever of
Hmm.
working in house in a studio.
Yeah.
But like, but I just name dropped a whole bunch of different stuff I've worked on that you've heard of, and it's like, and I've been working consistently and been able to pay my rent exclusively off of my art since I moved out here. And so like even though I'm not in a studio right now, I am part of the industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that everyone should keep in mind when it like not for me specifically, but like for themselves, right? And
Hmm.
so like if the way I always put it to people, it's like if you are working as an artist, if you are in a studio, you're in like you're in like the top 1% of artists. And that doesn't mean that you are necessarily better than the 99%. It means you, for whatever reason, had what they were looking for in that moment. And you know, what it does reflect is that that's how rare it is. You know, for all the artists that live in LA, very few of them are actually working in a studio. And
Yeah.
then conversely, if you are a working artist, you know, a working industry artist, and you are paying your rent exclusively off of your work, then you're in like the top 5% of artists, because
Yeah.
that's also really hard to do. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of, effort to allocate that kind of resources, those kinds of resources to building your brand to the level that you can do that.
Yeah.
So to
One of
answer
my
you,
favorite
yeah,
kind of on a similar wavelength, one of my favorite
sure,
kind of things to drop in that similar brand is that up until I believe the rights got purchased or he went like mega for like I forget the word, so like mega platinum, George R. R. Martin was working at a college.
yeah,
Like he was
yeah,
selling books and like that was definitely an
sure,
aspect of his um revenue stream, but
yeah,
it wasn't all he was doing. He wasn't just writing. And I mean, to be fair,
sure,
his writing speed also makes it really hard for him to be
yeah,
just writing
yeah.
anyway.
And there's
But
nothing wrong with that for like artists that
no,
have
absolutely
that
not.
either want a second job or they need one to balance out their rent or whatever. Like, more power to you, right?
Yeah. It's
Whatever it takes to,
so hard.
yeah. To answer you more directly, though, I would love to get some work in a studio. I would love to, even if I later on eventually decide that like I want to do freelance again, like I would love to have that opportunity to get to contribute to a project like that one,
What
like those ones.
project or studio would be like the dream get? Who would you love to work with, or even under? Like, is there a director or an art director that you would
Ooh,
like to work for? Any and all
boy,
kind of like
I,
supervisory kind of.
yeah. I mean that's a tough one. I mean, I am. Um, I mean, obviously, I'm open to working in all sorts of places, but I mean, these aren't directors, but they are IPs I'd love to work on. I would really love to be part of a Star Trek project, or to perhaps even more than Star Trek. Maybe is I would love to work on an Animorphs thing.
Hell yeah.
Big Animorphs fan here. Love Andalites, hate Yerks. But the Hork-Bajor Chronicles and the Andalite Chronicles are masterpieces, and I will hear nothing to the contrary. Um, but in terms of like directors, I mean, there's a lot of legends in the industry right now. I mean, who wouldn't want to work with like Gendy, for example, or like I don't know, Straczynski. Right now, I'm hoping that Babylon 5 will have some kind of resurgence because I'd love to work on that. um, but I'm trying to think of other like stuff. Like, there's so many cool things being made right now. Not right now. There was
Yeah.
so many cool things being made about 6 months ago. uh, Also, I am a I my favorite superhero is Batgirl, and I will never forgive them for what they did to that movie. I would love to see more
Yeah.
Batgirl related content get made. I'd love to be a part of that. To that extent, Gail Simone, phenomenal. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for whatever I can sink my teeth into.
Well, speaking of, what do you on a regular do you, as you are freelance and kind of control your own schedule and control what you do more than most, how do you have a structure for your a day in the life, a week in the life, given you're assuming like kind of normal inbox dealies, or is it very much just, you are at the whims of your muse? How does your art dictate your life, or your life dictate your art on
Yeah,
a
I
on a weekly deal?
one of those things. I heard you say something about the muse, and it's like I think inspiration is a fickle mistress. I wake up and I say it's time to get to work. And
Love that.
so um, I definitely am kind of a, how do I put this nicely? I I I work a lot. I work a lot. I I used to do this thing. So like I do try to mitigate things. I do have like sort of a schedule of sorts. It's sort of a loose schedule, but I wake up. I'm an early riser. Sorry about my computer making a noise there. I wake up. I'm an early riser. I usually after I have breakfast, I will go to the gym. I get back, and then it's time to get to work. And aside from taking a stop to like make meals or whatever, or occasionally take a little break with a video game for like 15-30 minutes, I'm pretty much working all day. And one of the
How
things
long is all day? So we're getting up in the morning, like
I
broad
sleep
strokes.
I sleep 8 hours. Uh, that's
Wow.
I'm one of those people that sleeps 8 hours. I hate coffee. I don't like coffee. I don't drink it. Uh,
All right.
I
Feeling
I
a little
just don't.
targeted now.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. It's an unpopular opinion. I just don't like. I try it like once a year to see if I like the flavor yet, and the answer is always no. But I so typically, whenever I go to bed, I'm usually up 8 hours later. Um, for me, that usually means I usually go to bed sometime between midnight and 2
Okay.
um, in the morning. And so then I'm usually up sometime between, 8 and 10, uh, usually closer to 8. Um, but what was I lost my train of thought
So
there.
you
Sorry.
wake up around somewhere between 8 and 10.
Yeah.
When do you kind of clock out? Or do you clock out when your head hits the pillow, or do you like how much time do
So
you give yourself to be you, to do you?
yeah, for
Or
me, clocking out usually means like stopping to work on some of my projects. So like clocking out still kind of looks like work to someone that doesn't know the differences.
to one
um,
of these muggles,
right. Yes. To one of these.
nerf herders.
Yes. He's scruffy looking. Um,
Do you ever worry about with doing this is going to sound trite and stupid, but do you ever worry about doing so much of what you love for work and then what you love for you? Are you ever worried about burnout? Do you ever experience kind of like just looking at an easel and just like going "Meh!" and just like throwing it out the window like a lunatic, or
no,
is it just it's just so embodying?
I really don't. And I know that this might be a controversial thing as well, and I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm sure people will disagree with this, but I don't really believe in burnout as a concept. I mean, obviously, I believe in people having a healthy relationship with their work, and if that gets out of balance, they might need to take a break. But for me,
Hmm.
um, like so. I mentioned before that I have a lot of like works in progress at any given time. And
Yep.
so when you're feeling like you need a break, for me, when you
Hmm.
feel like you need a break, and from whatever you're working on, or you're not sure what to work on for a little bit, I pull up one of those drafts and I start developing it. And
Mm.
I might pick a draft based off of how much fun or challenging or relaxing I think that particular piece will be. Did this piece make me laugh? Well, I feel like working on it. I'm currently working on a cute little piece of well, I've got a lot of drafts, but the one I was working on before this call is it's this cute little piece of this radical little 90s budgie with a backwards cap, and he's skateboarding on with a tech with a it's he's skateboarding with a tech deck skateboard, and he's made a little railing to grind off of out of like straws and like pencils and stuff, and it's it's stupid and it's silly and it makes me laugh, and so like uh, and so that's it's an example, right? It's like something fun that's like I can work on. Like if you're not sure what to work on next, having a bunch of drafts ready to go, while you're working on them and figuring them out, you come up with other things you want to work on. And something else I forgot to mention before that I like to do as well. Very often when I finish a piece, I like to take the day after that off. Uh, so if I finish it early in the morning, I'll just take that day off. But if I finish it late at night, I will take the next day off.
So when you say take a day off, what do you do with your days off if this is your bliss and your occupation? What do you
Well,
like to do for
sometimes,
fun?
like I said, sometimes taking a day off means just like working on my own stuff. But it can also mean spending some time with friends, or you know, going to see a movie, or going to like I really if you're in the LA area and you haven't been to Iliad bookstore, you should go. Um, it's, they didn't pay me to say that. I'm just a passionate believer in buying used books. so I got a pile of books I've got to go through, and comics and stuff, and for me it's just as much about relaxing as it is enriching myself with more artwork, right? And finding cool things in there. So it's all kind of interrelated. Or like working, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but like I also make puppets, right? And so like taking some time away to work on a puppet, gets yourself working on something different kinds of problem solving. uh that can also be very relaxing and fun as like a side thing.
That's so cool.
Thanks.
So in movies and TV shows, they often show animators as somewhere between neurotic, obsessive, compulsive, stinky, smelly, plenty of adjectives that are not particularly illustrious.
Sure.
Do you think, not necessarily those ones, but in films and movies that either you've worked on or that you've seen, do you feel like there are some that stand out as being particularly accurate or particularly inaccurate?
you know I love this question. It reminds me of something that I always like to say to people. Um, to answer the question quickly, I do think a lot of these movies are not terribly accurate with their depictions of artists. I think a lot of it gets either downtrodden or romanticized. But I know those are polar opposites, but I think both can be true. Um, Something that I like to say, because my background, I came to the animation world as an illustrator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And illustration as a discipline, um, because of the freelance nature of it and all that business, illustrators are kind of trained to be kind of cutthroat. They're kind of lone wolf, right? Like everyone's sort of in it for themselves, looking for clients or whatever, right? That's not to say that illustrators can't have friends. It's just in terms of how that industry functions, because everyone's always hunting for their own work. Um, so the thing I always say is that animators are kind of like golden retrievers, and and that's why I like hanging out with them so much, because I'm an illustrator that behaves like an animator. So and that's kind of the thing that like I think movies and shows and whatever always kind of get wrong is there's always this push to either depict artists as either, like you say, neurotic or like miserable, right? And the truth is, like, some of us just want to like have fun and make each other laugh, and like like those like old, like, have you seen those old like little animation shorts and rough drawings from like the Looney Tunes crew or whatever, where they like have like Porky Pig saying fuck, or like
Yeah,
depicting characters with their dicks out, and like just like weird stuff, like, because that's who we all really are, right? When
yeah.
you and I
It's
when I
just the
say,
editors and the producers won't let us put that to print.
yeah, like when I say who we all really are, I mean like every human being on the planet. Like, we're all a little deranged, we're all a little eccentric, we're all a little degenerate, and like sort of having a laugh about it is fun, right? I am staunchly against nihilism, and I very much enjoy a goofy sense of absurdism. Like I think it's fun to be silly, and I think people that act like they're above it are just putting on a show, and they're lying to themselves, and they're denying themselves the chance to have a lot of fun.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about art, especially as a form of storytelling by the wider world?
The biggest misconception about art or storytelling from the wider world.
What's something that people are just constantly, they're like, oh, they're like talking to you, and you're just like, no. Other than,
Yeah,
animators drawing dicks and,
sure.
being just, low key
Um,
children with good artistic intuition.
I think the biggest lie people tell themselves about artists is that there is that I kind of touched down on this a little bit earlier. Just like there are people that want to pretend that art suddenly got political or that art was not political at some point in the past, and that was never
Hmm.
true. That was never true. Art, all art, absolutely, all human expression is political. The things you focus on, the things you ignore, the things that you treat as normal, and the things that you treat as freakish, those are all political statements. And every piece of art is political. Um, and people want to sit there and they want to put some forms of art on a pedestal as being political, and some forms of art they want to malign and say, oh, it's just for kids, quote unquote. And and that couldn't be further from the truth. Um, there are big ideas in every art form. And this, we're dealing with right now this big predilection towards like doing live action adaptations of anime and Disney films and stuff. And I just think it's so misguided. And they're doing it because they deem quote unquote live action as being somehow more legitimate and more capable of being political. And they say, oh, this got political, oh, this got woke or whatever. It's like, no, man, it was always political.
Yeah.
You just either ignored it or you just didn't, you just like your politics somehow aligned with it and you changed, you know
Mm.
like suddenly the politics that were inherent to the medium or the story, suddenly they didn't agree with you anymore, and then you said it was political because now it's impacting your ability to enjoy it, to process it. That cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable for you, and instead of being introspective about it, you'd rather blame the art itself. But that's what the art showed up to do. The art showed up to make you think about these things.
Huh. That's interesting the way you say that the art showed up to make you think about these things.
Because all art is political, when art is placed in front of you, it is there with a goal to and sometimes that goal can be simple, like do unto others as you would have done unto you, that type of thing. And sometimes that goal can be more complicated, right? Like I think a really good example of that is like Steven Universe, right? Where it's
Mm.
like, yeah, they're space rocks, but they're all coded as women and they love each other and they dance instead of having sex or whatever. And that's smart. That's a really smart thing to do. To take, all these conservative idiot parents, right, are like walking around saying, "Oh, how am I supposed to explain gay people to my kids?" And it's like, first of all, that shouldn't be controversial to explain anyway. But to the extent that you feel that it is controversial, this show is how, right? You're those two women love each other. They're just like Garnet and being comprised of what is it? Ruby and Sapphire. And so like this idea that, oh yeah, like two people love each other and they kind of become a unit together, right? And having, couching it in uh, uh, this sort of more playful, more child friendly kind of interpretation of it, right? Where it's like they're space rocks and they technically don't have gender, they're aliens and they have magical girl weapons and stuff. Like that's like it's a very like approachable way to engage with what is ultimately a story about relationships and about love and about the validity of love in all its forms. Uh, so I kind of got off the rails again. but
If
but
I
but I
wanted you to stay on the rails, I wouldn't have brought you on this program, my friend.
thank goodness.
So
Thank goodness.
I kind of have an interesting theoretical for you, and
Sure.
not going to argue with this. I'm just curious on your opinion.
Yeah.
Years ago, there was a fantastic episode of one of my favorite programs of all time in South Park that I believe was titled Mr. Poopy's Butthole or something like that, wherein characters in the show set out to write a book to
Oh,
be as obscene as possible.
oh
And,
yes.
and it
Oh,
is
I'm
meant
sorry.
to.
I need to correct you. I'm sorry. I need to issue a
Okay,
correction. The name of that book was Scrody McBoogerballs.
Scrody McBuggerballs. Thank you.
So I know
So
exactly what you're talking about.
yes. So in Wit, or to Wit, the main characters attempt to write a book that is just foul because they've read Catcher in the Rye and they were told it was going to be a dirty book and they were
Yeah,
very underwhelmed. So they set out to write this book that is just horrendous. It's
yeah,
not horrendous in necessarily in tone or in scope or what it says, but in the language they choose to use.
sure.
They don't, as they are like fourth graders or whatever, they don't intend to write anything of substance. They just intend to write something that's disgusting to, kind of outdo this book that was supposed to be foul and
Sure.
that like sorely let them down as they are children. And then uh the parents in the show get a hold of it and it goes gangbusters and sells everywhere and people infer all this information that it means this, it means that, no, it means this. Do you
Sure.
think it's possible to make art that, I don't want to say means nothing, but doesn't really have meaning or gets given meaning by the reader? Because we were talking about, so it being political, it having these viewpoints, it having this agenda. Is it possible, do you think, for certain things to be given agenda that they were not created with?
So, I mean, that is at the core of why illustration is such an important art form. Where other art form, like, sculptures, it's just a description of the medium, right? You are sculpting, you're making a physical item, right? Or painting, it's a description of the medium. You are using paint. Photography, same thing. You're using a camera, right? Illustration is not a description of a medium. It is a description of a concept. It is the act of conveyance between two parties. It is me trying to convey a story or what I'm feeling or what I think you should know to somebody else. And in the real world, you make a piece of art and you send it off into the world, and it needs to stand on its own and effectively convey the thing that you wanted it to convey, even without you there to explain it. And this is kind of the big, like, I think this is kind of one of the flaws of like art museums, right? Is that, like, sometimes anyway, they will kind of just spell out what the painting means to the audience. They'll write it down on a plaque next to the painting. And I think there should be room for there should be wiggle room for people to interpret the art on their own terms, because it's up to the artist to effectively convey the idea consistently in a way that audiences will grasp accurately. So do I think it is possible for art to move out into the world and be given meanings that were not originally intended? Not only do I think it's possible, I think it happens all the time.
Do you think
But
that's a
that doesn't
mistake,
mean
or
the
do you
work.
think that's just the way the medium works?
I'm sorry, say it again. I'm
Do you
sorry.
think that's a mistake on the creator's part, or do you think that's just the way the medium works with an imperfect audience?
I don't think it's necessarily a mistake. I do think if an artist had a specific goal in mind and that is not clear, I think that can be a sign of a piece failing to reach its audience effectively. But that doesn't mean that the work is necessarily bad. It means it's not effective. And so
Hmm.
I think it's important, to understand that sort of collaborative between the artist and the audience. But just because an artist like used like a random number generator or something in order to make something that is seemingly as random as possible, when I say everything's political, I really mean it. And even if you don't go into a piece intending for it to have politics, it will. Um, even the inherent biases of your, I used like, I just mentioned like random number generator, like a dice, right? Like rolling a dice. But, even if you have a 100-sided dice or whatever, each one of those 100 options, there's a bias inherent to those options, right? You decided what those options would be on some level. And so I think that there are these inherent biases everywhere, these inherent politics everywhere, whether we want them to be there or not. And so it's our responsibility to wield that understanding of the world to be more effective. And the thing that I always say to I this isn't my quote, but somebody said this and I liked it, where it's like the only obligation of an artist is to be sincere. Um, and I think that's a
Hmm.
really important thing for all artists to keep in mind. That is your primary obligation, is to be sincere in what you are trying to do. Trying to think if I've actually answered your question.
I mean, if you
But,
haven't, you've answered a better one.
oh well, cool.
So, lastly, before we change the music, what would you say is your favorite non-obvious aspect to art, to creating art?
My favorite non-obvious aspect.
Yeah, what is something that people don't understand that you wish they knew that you revel in, that you get to that that comes out, that is a part of an output of a byproduct of a fly on the wall, a the smelling of coffee grounds, if you will, that they don't get to see.
Sure. For every character I've depicted, there is a story that goes along with them. Um, there, and that story comes with its own dose of world building. And a lot of that world building, like you'll see the edge of it, right? When I make the piece, but a lot of that world building, you know, I included some of it in my art book that I made in 2019, but largely a lot of it is kind of for me to know and to explain if somebody actually wants to know more about it, right? And so that can be, you know, why an alien's spacesuit looks the way it does, or why I chose to make the sky of this painting like such a strange shade of green, or I have this series of space bugs, and they all have these different speech bubbles with these different languages that I've designed how they work. I get really into that, and so like I did a comic for my thesis project where I had like 8 alien races in this like sort of noir setting, and for each alien race, I was designing the evolution and what their planet looked like and how their language functioned, and where they were in like the social pecking order of this galactic sort of conglomeration of worlds. And obviously, like, at most maybe like 10% of that makes it into the final comic, but I have answers for all of it. So if I want to go back and tell a story in that world, I know what that world is doing. I know how it functions. um and so that's like a really like fun thing for me to know and plan, and I think a lot of it shows through in how the designs end up for like a character or a creature. But you know uh that's me doing my best to convey, right? And like all artists, there are varying degrees of success and effectiveness in that conveyance. um Another thing I really enjoy that might be a little bit more accessible is so as a comic artist, um I get really, really into um, page flow, like compositional page flow. Uh, this is one of the things that uh, Gary Amaro would tell me in my master's, where it's like, you're not just telling a story, you're also teaching the reader how to read the story while they're reading it. So, using clever staging and composition and panel layouts to guide the viewer to read the panels in the correct order without getting mixed up, right? And
Okay.
that is a huge amount of layout planning for any comic page. And I think it's so fun, especially, and it's one of those things, right? You did it right if somebody reads the story and they read it correctly, right? They're not asking questions like, oh, what did this just happen this way or that way? Like, you know that's how you know you did it right, because you taught them how to read it, and you did it in such a subtle way that they didn't even realize they were being taught. They just thought they were reading it correctly because they were.
Got him.
Got him.
Boom. All right. So to move from such a lovely and lavish page to one that is downright dastardly.
Sure.
David, my friend, what is your preposterous peeve?
Oh, yes. Yes, I was saying, yes, Kyle told me about this question, and I had an answer right away. We talked about it in the car. And so my preposterous pet peeve, and I know that it's ridiculous, and I know why this is the case, is every time, I go, let's put yourself in my shoes for a second. Let me walk you through.
All right, what size are you?
So my shoe size is actually like 15 and a half. So
Are you a clown? The fuck?
Yeah. I usually wear 16s because it's easier to find. I'm
6'4". Do you dunk by falling down? What the fucking Jesus Christ?
I don't know. Do you play miniature golf? What do you want from me?
Yes. And I'm bad at it.
Oh. So you're in my size 16 shoes, and you go to a bookstore, and to your delight,
I hit my head on the door.
Yes, after you hit on the door. To your delight, you see a new dinosaur book, one that you haven't seen before, and you're so excited.
Yippee!
You walk over, you crack that bad boy open, and there's no photographs.
Motherfucker!
The fuck is that about? And of course, it's absurd to have photographs of dinosaurs because the camera's like around like 150 years old, and dinosaurs existed 65 million years ago. But somewhere deep in your subconscious, every time you see a new dinosaur book, you hope this one will have photographic reference of dinosaurs. And it's like, I know it's silly. I know. And I know I get it. But, and I love I love doing speculative paleo art of dinosaurs. Like I've done quite a few of those where like I try to imagine some interesting things about how they might have lived. But I want to know what they looked like. I want to know, and I don't mean fossils. Skeletons are cool. I want to know what they looked like walking around. We all want to know. And that's my pet peeve because I want to see photos of dinosaurs.
Man just wants what he wants.
I know what I want, and I can't.
And he wants it now.
I do want it now.
When did this first piss you off? Were you walking around with your parents at a museum and you're like, yeah, but like, what did they look like?
It was honestly, it was like a subconscious thing that I only like in the past few years was able to put to words, where it was like, I get excited to see a new dinosaur book. I flip through it and I like it. I love the illustrations that are in there. All right. But then there's like this like gnawing thing in my subconscious where it's like, those are cool, but they aren't, they're not photos of dinosaurs. So like, you don't know if that's really what they looked like. It's a good guess. That's what we got. We're doing good guesses. But I want to see one. I want to see a dinosaur. And don't any of your commenters be here, what about birds? I know. All right. I know about theropods. I know about ostrich. I know about Watson.
You don't think he fucking knows about theropods?
I know about Watson. Do you know about Watson?
This is David fucking Wentworth here. He knows about Watson.
I know about Watson. Do you know about Watson? Because they're fucking cool.
I mean, who doesn't know about Watson?
It's Hoatzin for people who want to look it up. It is a species of bird from the Amazon that still has hands. They still have their hands. The babies use them to crawl back into the trees when they fall out. It is a bird that still has hands just like a dinosaur. And if that's not the coolest fucking thing you've ever heard, then you should shut down this podcast right now.
I mean, and then go look up Watsons.
They're also really cool looking. They've got these really fun, like reddish, rusty, like head feathers and stuff. They're spectacular. But also, still, I want to see a photo of a dinosaur. That's my pet peeve.
Did you have a moment where this like really, it percolated. It got to boiling, and then the heat didn't stop, and it just you made a mess.
No, I don't think it ever got that bad. I think like for me, I don't. So like the peeves that the things that I have that I would call peeves,
Mm-hmm.
I don't I get like frustrated about them quietly. Like they're like it's very rare that I get like aggravated about
Get
something like that.
frustrated about them quietly. It's just I don't
Yeah,
know.
like yeah. I don't think something that I would describe as a peeve is not something that I like get like visibly angry about. Like the things I get visibly angry about are like poaching and landlords and genocide and I know that this isn't me trying to like grandstand or be like holier than thou or whatever. It's just
And
like
my favorite shoes that are only in sizes 14 and a half. Man, what the fuck?
Actually, that is a true problem. That's actually true. I
I've
gosh,
started a group with 8 other people that are in the NBA, and we want shoes that are in our size.
there are dozens of us. So,
2 dozens
yes,
of us.
right. No,
Right.
it's like having a big foot on top of being a vegan. So like it's like so I have to find shoes that fit that are also not made with animal products, and like you usually can find one but not the other. So I people make fun of me for having New Balance shoes sometimes, but like motherfucker, they fit and they're usually not made of leather. So
All right. Well, lastly, before we throw it to a commercial break, if you could have
sure.
listeners of this podcast, your one song of your choosing, which would it be?
Yeah, so this was a tough one. I had to go with my favorite band REM, and so from there we went to Losing My Religion. I know it's not a super rare song.
But
Lately
it is
I've
a
been
banger.
obsessed. I've been obsessed with One Last Kiss by Hikaru Utada. But I'm one of those people that I'm kind of awful at finding new music. I'm trying to get better about it. Kyle, your last guest, like he's like a total audiophile, and he helps me out a lot with like finding new bands and stuff. I'm one of those people. I find a song I like, and then I like play it 12 times, and I don't bother to like go like Google search the band for anything else they've ever done. Like, I don't, I don't know. I need to get better about it, but I'm trying. I'm trying.
All right. Well, with that apology, we're going to throw it to our sponsors. So David here can have a minute to put on this here rubber suit before we
Hmm.
get all up in the lightning round.
Oh
But
boy.
if advertisements aren't your thing, why not have a listen to Losing My Religion by REM? Or if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Beef Podcast, Song Rex. It's a long title, I know.
Don't worry, there's a link in the description.
Either way, see you in a bit.
You know what they say about long titles.
Heyo! Do you ever find yourself doing a mundane activity with nothing to keep you from gouging your eyes out or sticking a pencil through one ear and out the other? Uh-huh. Well, then perhaps I could introduce you to music. Music comes in a variety of different types, flavors, and colors. Theorists say that it's the best thing to introduce to your life since food. So go out and get some and make your life just a little bit more bearable. And we are back! David, are you ready to enter a lightning round?
The lightning round.
Oh, geez. Oh, gosh. Oh, I think
All
so.
right, well, buckle your seatbelts and keep your arms inside the ride at all times. David, do people have an inherent duty to help others?
Yes.
Album, shuffle, or playlist?
Definitely shuffle.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
I mean, hopefully something amazing.
Would you rather meet an alien or a ghost?
Alien. And a light.
Are you out of touch, or is it the children who are wrong?
I don't think either.
Is there such a thing as a perfect piece of art?
No.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school? Be
Uh,
honest.
Maybe a little.
Is professional wrestling cool or lame?
It's cool, especially Kaiju Big Battle.
Do you create your own thoughts or do you just listen to them?
Both.
Would you rather eat nothing but insects for a year or go without electricity for a year?
I'm a vegan, so no electricity.
Have you ever had a crush on a cartoon character?
Absolutely.
One good novel or a 12-book series?
Oh. Gosh, and they can't be the same, huh? I guess one good novel.
Are hot dogs tacos?
No.
Skydiving or deep sea diving?
Oh gosh. I'm gonna go with deep sea, so long as it's not that submersible. Like, as long as it's snorkeling. Give me. I'll do scuba diving.
Do people who prefer Pepsi to Coke deserve human rights?
Yeah.
Would you rather have tentacle arms or kangaroo legs?
Ooh, I kind of already got kangaroo legs. Tentacle arms might be interesting.
Is peeing in the shower normal human behavior or just for those filthy mer people?
When you gotta go, you gotta go. But filthy mer people.
Speaking of mer people, which is realer, mermaids or Bigfoot?
Which is realer?
Yes, sir.
Oh, definite. Well, I mean, manatees exist, but I guess I go with the Bigfoot, right? It's like a
And
gigantic-
lastly, could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1 hour time limit?
Absolutely.
Congratulations, you've survived the lightning round!
Woo! Yeah! What did I win?
Well, before we move on to your prize, I, like many listeners at home, would like to now know, what is your favorite food that you could eat 37 of in a 1 hour time limit for $5,000?
Oh man, I mean, the first thing I thought of was figs.
Damn. Well, now as a reward, my Galvin guest, I grant thee a lightning request of your own to be echoed.
So my lightning round question.
Yes, sir.
All right. Are you being the person Mr. Rogers knew you could be?
I'm going to say no. He would say yes. I'm still going to cry in the shower tonight.
Okay. At least you're honest about it.
What about you?
You know, I know it's a tough question to ask yourself. And I know that nobody's perfect, but I do my best to try to be the person that Mr. Rogers knew I could be, and I want to say yes.
Yay!
But it took a while to get there. I'm not saying it was easy all the time.
Yay!
Yeah.
All right, well, as we come to a close here, is there anything you want to plug, shout-outs you'd like to give, or places where people could find you or your content?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you search David Wentworth art, I'm on all social medias except for Twitter. I'm not there. But yeah, I guess so. I guess I'm going to be at WonderCon this year. If people want to check me out there, or if
you
they
wondered what was going to be at WonderCon.
Yeah, or if you want to do some good for charity and also support me as an artist, you can also check out my Etsy shop, which is it's David W Gallery, where a lot of my prints also go to supporting worthy causes. Like helping endangered species, trans rights, Black Lives Matter, things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, David, for being my guest today, and a special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And thank you, yes, you, listening at home or wherever you find time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry. We put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our patrons, Sabella Yellow. If you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud, just head on over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves podcast. And remember, folks, if days are numbered and songs are sung, at the end of the day, I think we've all won. So please stick around, because great things have only just begun.